Okay, chapter 7 of Atonement is incredibly short, but also incredibly valuable if we're looking at childhood. We're looking at McEwan's narrative technique. Okay, remember the examiners want you to focus on key images, key symbols, key motifs, and techniques that are used, throughout this book to get the idea of childhood and the narrative itself across to us. So what we get in the first sort of paragraph or so, really, that's on page 72, is this description of the temple, which is sort of part of the house that's over the bridge and out the way on this island. And the whole thing, the description of it, sums up, again, contextually, the way that this way of life is on its way out. Okay, it looks sorry, it looks mottled, it looks diseased, all those words are in there to show how innocence has been tainted, but also how this world that Briony inhabits is on its way out. Halfway down page 73, again we get the little reference that the lost memory of the temple's grander relation, which gave the use this little building its sorry air. So yeah, again, it's that idea of what it could have been almost makes it more unfortunate. Okay, perhaps Briony's narrative is all the more poignant because we realise what could have happened to Robbie and Cecilia, that wet patch by the Fenton, that's all that's left of them, could have been a great relationship had Briony not come up with the story that she did. We get sort of towards the bottom of page 73, after the little break, McEwan describes that it's hard to slash at nettles for long without a story imposing itself, and Briony was soon absorbed and grimly content. She's slashing at these nettles, but she's turning it into a story. She's turning it into characters that she's slashing down. And this bit's a great symbol for basically everything that Briony does at the end, because at the end of the novel, she slashes down herself as this character who actually has been the narrator throughout. She slashes down Robbie and Cecilia by revealing that they've died. She slashes down the book itself by revealing that actually it's as much fantasy as Briony's imaginings when she was a little girl. And so we get the description that goes throughout the first half of page 74 of her cutting those things down. And ironically, that's exactly what she does at the end of the novel. And then it says at the sort of about halfway down page 74, playwriting itself became a nettle, became several, in fact, the shallowness, the wasted time. So she's cutting down characters, and then she's cutting down writing itself. So that ending of the novel that becomes very postmodern, that's about story writing itself, Briony's doing the same thing. She's cutting it down. She's revealing the inaccuracies in what she's told us. Towards the bottom of page 74, we get she disposed of her old self year by year in 13 strokes. So again, she's moving on to destroying herself. This novel is her atonement, and yet ironically at the end she reveals she can't get that atonement because who can she apologise to? Cecilia and Robbie are both dead. It's up to the reader to sort of judge her the way that we can. So that scene becomes a great sort of metaphor for exactly what happens at the end, where she crosses the bridges again, where she goes to watch the trials of Arabella, but where actually she's also telling us that the story that she's told us, she's cutting it down. It's not true. It's a draft. When we move over to page 76, about a third of the way down, we get Briony sort of coming back to her senses after this imagination. Okay, and we get that motif again. The words come back. So we're about a third of the way down. Her reverie, once reaching plausible details, had become a passing silliness before the hard mass of the actual. It was difficult to come back, as Sissy used to whisper. She's finding it hard to sort of drag herself back to reality. And again, I've said this really is a metaphor for exactly what she does come back to, and there's those words again at the end of the novel where she's watching the trials of Arabella but cutting down that story that she's given us before. Right at the end, the very, very top of page 77, she's climbing the steep grassy slope to the bridge. So there's a bridge again. It's another turning point. Okay, she's seen Robbie and Cecilia. She's at that point where she's about to sort of commit her great sin. And it says she decided that she would stay there and wait until something significant happened to her. Okay, the bridge is this turning point. She's waiting for it to happen. But she's created this turning point, hasn't she? She's waiting for it to happen. She's getting herself out of childhood. She's created the situation for this to happen. So she's desperate to leave childhood. But ironically, her own immaturity has created the situation where she does lose her innocence. And the last couple of lines of this chapter on page 77, she would simply wait on the bridge, calm and obstinate, until events, real events, not her own fancies, rose to her challenge and dispelled her insignificance. She's desperate for real life to come in and make her an adult. Deeply ironic by McEwan though, isn't it, really? Okay, because the irony that we get is that actually it is her imagination. She waits for, this rape that ends up happening, but it's her imagination that tells her that it's Robbie that's done it. And the atonement, again, only happens in her imagination. It only happens in this world that she's created. Okay, so it ends on her saying, I'll wait for real life. But the irony, of course, is that there is no real life in this novel. As she tells us at the end, the world that she's created leaves her as God. Everything that happens in this novel is simply up to the author. Okay, so chapter 7, very short, but very useful.